Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for another Film Fanatic show. It is Thursday morning at about 11:25. Hope everyone's doing good. There's been well, there's been a little bit of a lag with videos on my part just because I kind of got busy doing some other things and stuff in the morning. But I'm still cranking out the videos. I've been recording, still maintaining what I try to do, which is do a video every day or just about. And what I've been doing with that, I've been recording a bunch of videos. So I have like a selection of videos to upload as I go. So I've been just kind of recording one and then having two ready to go and just been kind of on in that cycle. It's been a little bit helpful. It's again, as always, so many movies that I want to get to. There's so many things I want to talk about when it comes to movies. You know, it's for me one of the most enjoyable things to do. So I've been going to the shops that I love, and I've been buying a lot of movies. So that's been one thing too. So I've been kind of, you know, living with this list of movies and a bunch of titles I've been wanting to get to. So today's show is on some of the movies, or I should say, one of the movies from one of my last purchases, or my last day at that I went to Goodwill in Rockland. I go there quite a bit. I try to go there a couple times a month, and I typically always buy. I try to only buy Blu-rays there. I have gotten quite a few DVDs, but mostly Blu-rays, and they have a really awesome selection, especially when it comes to the more like bigger budget Hollywood films, which I love as well. And my last trip there was kind of amazing, and I got a huge assortment of movies. So I've been slowly getting into doing recording videos around those movies, and also I've gotten a bunch of newer editions of movies that I have reviewed, and that's been really really cool. So I've been watching those films and slowly recording the videos for them. So today's show is on one of those movies, and that is I got this really special, really cool edition of the original Jurassic Park. I got this for like $10. I got this at Goodwill. This is a 3D version of this really awesome movie on Blu-ray, and it was unsealed, unopened. It has there's two discs. There's a DVD version and also a Blu-ray version, a 3D version, which is really really cool. Unfortunately, I don't have a 3D player, but I did not have this movie on Blu-ray as far as I know. And I figured even if I did have a Blu-ray, or even if I did have this movie on Blu-ray, I figured I'd buy it anyway from a collector's standpoint, to buy it, on 3D, because you don't really see that very often. And I did do a review on this movie a while back, and I think it was based on the DVD version of this film. I could be wrong, but I believe I don't own this on Blu-ray. This is the only copy I have that I have this film on Blu-ray. I have a really good DVD copy of it, but I have a pretty long and interesting history with this film. I remember in English class when it was announced when I was in high school, and this movie, it always blows me away by how many years ago Jurassic Park, the original, came out. Of course, it's become this massive franchise. There's been so many movies that are a part of this franchise. In all honesty, I'm not really a fan of the rest of the films. I kind of feel like they just get, I don't know, more and more silly and ridiculous, and not for the right reasons. They get a little bit more campy, but and I just feel like they're a little bit, for the most part, most of the other films in the franchise are just really overstuffed and overbloated. I I've never really I've seen most of them. The more recent ones that have come out in the last 2 or 3 years, I have not seen. I've just kind of checked out as far as watching the rest of those movies. I'm not a huge fan of the franchise of Jurassic Park, but I think the first movie is kind of an amazing movie. And it's hard to believe every time I watch this movie, I'm always blown away that this movie came out in '93. So long ago. And I remember seeing this movie in high school. Yeah, it was directed by, you know, one of the legends in Hollywood, of course, Steven Spielberg. Amazing cast, iconic cast. Laura Dern, one of the greatest actresses ever. Of course, Jeff Goldblum, Sam Neill, Richard Attenborough, Anna Richards, Bo Wang, Joseph Mazzella, and Wayne Knight. Such a great cast. And this movie is, you know, really, I think this movie came at a real pivotal time in Hollywood as far as big budget films and the use of practical effects, but then also using, what would later become CGI. This was kind of like at the cusp of that. And I feel like when Jurassic Park came out, it was definitely, as far as from a technical viewpoint, it really was. It ushered in this new era, for good or bad. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of movies that have a heavy use on CGI, but I do think that you know where that technology has gone, and if it's handled by the right directors, the right filmmakers, it can be pretty spectacular. I think there are examples of where it has, really elevated the film. I think some films that really are examples of that came after Jurassic Park, because I really feel Jurassic Park really ushered in that new era and how to do it right. But I think like the first three Lord of the Rings movies, directed by Peter Jackson, it's an example, or definitely an example of just a perfect use of practical effects, but then a heavy use and leaning into using CGI, but it's kind of seamless. It's kind of amazing. It's kind of incredible. And it's something that's kind of needed to tell a film like Jurassic Park, where it is, of this like epic scale. Other films where I feel it was really seamless were I'm a big fan of the Spider-Man movies, especially with Tom Holland. Huge fan of those films. And Tom Holland is overall my favorite Spider-Man. I think those three films are just incredible, and the use of the practical effects are amazing. As far as like a lot of the Marvel movies, I think the Infinity War, Avenger films, especially the first Avenger movie and Infinity War and Endgame, it's just spectacular and it's completely seamless. I think what other movies would I say are great examples of that? Blade Runner 2049 would be another example of that, of movies where it really blends those two things really, really well, or at a whole new level. I think the new Dune movie, Dune 2, directed by Denis Villeneuve, is probably the greatest example of that right now. It's just astounding on how beautiful it looks. But, and in getting back to another Marvel film, which I did do a review on, which I'm a huge fan of, and I do want to watch it again, is Black Panther. I love that movie. And I think that is another example of just perfect symmetry between technology and using practical effects and actors and all of those things, blue screen. So it can be done. And but I think on the other side of things, there's a lot of examples of where it's not handled really well, and you can really see, the difference, and it takes you out. It looks too artificial. But I think Jurassic Park was one of those movies that really ushered in kind of a new era as far as the use of computer generated images the new technology. You know, I think some of the worst examples of the use of computer generated effects would be, well, I really think the CGI and things used for the later Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings films, the Hobbit and the Hobbit Part Two, and those three films are. I'm not a fan of those films at all, but I feel like the CGI is really kind of awful. I think, the Star Wars prequels, Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith. I think the CGI in those films is really awful. It just looks, it's so artificial and so. Not only are the performances so wooden by the actors, and the script is so bad, or the scripts are so bad, but I think the CGI is so overly used that it feels like you're watching, a computer game, and not even a really good quality computer game. So there's a lot of examples of that. It's something. It happens. When there's a new technology that is accessible by, creators in film, and it becomes a thing of where, okay, they can execute some of these ideas that they have, but it becomes a thing of where it becomes, I don't know, commodity, or it's easy to use. The cost for those budgets can be, it can save a lot of money, so it can, overcompensate and get in the way of the story. But I think Jurassic Park is an example of where, again, this came out in '93. It was before CGI, on the cusp of that, but basically it was leading into that next phase of filmmaking as far as big budget films. But I think Jurassic Park is a primetime example. Watching this edition on Blu-ray is pretty astounding. It looks amazing. It looks gorgeous. There's nothing dated about it. It's seamless. It's a seamless execution of a real epic film. I remember when I was in English class. I had an English class in high school, and I remember one of the book projects that we had to work on and that we read was the book Jurassic Park, the original novel. And I think it was written by Michael Crichton. I think, pretty sure. And I remember that was a book project that we were assigned in English class, and we all read it, and then we had to do a book report on it. And I really really loved that book. I thought it was just amazing. And I remember at the end of the semester for that class, and where everybody turned in their projects, my English teacher, who I can't remember her name, I think her name was Mrs. Palmiro. She had told the class that, well, this movie is now going to be turned into a live action movie, and it was going to be directed by Steven Spielberg. And I remember when she first told us that, it was like I was blown away by the idea of seeing this book put on the in the on the big screen, and I was just like blown away, because at that time, this is '93. There wasn't really anything quite like that, and like that scale of things. I mean, you had obviously the movies that came out way before, say, the Star Wars movies, but that was a different, that was a generation before me. That was like a removed thing for me. So Jurassic Park was like in my world at that time, and I was like, I don't know, 16, 17. So I was aware of it. I was really into the book. We had just finished the project in English class around it, so I was really excited. But I remember just being blown away at this idea that this was going to be, this new thing, and it was going to be introduced, you know, on the big screen and told that way. And I was like, wow, a live action movie. And, nothing of that scale had been done at that time. So it was kind of a revolutionary idea. And then when the film came out, the first Jurassic Park, it was a phenomenon. It was a huge, huge hit. And again, I think it's such a great movie. It's a really great adaptation of a really great book. It has a level of to a degree, even though it's a fantastical story, it has a level of where it's kind of grounded in science and reality. But I can't recommend this movie enough on Blu-ray, especially this edition. Again, I don't have a 3D player, but I figured as a collector, this would be an awesome one to have. It does have just the straight up Blu-ray version, but the straight up Blu-ray version of this film is pretty spectacular and still holds up so well in 2024. So thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.